The dropship shook violently as it hit turbulence, and an Atraxian stormtrooper let out a shriek when a drop of that vile methylcarbinol called whiskey escaped the container held by the sole human on board. "Can you stop scaring the Munifexes, John? You know half that bottle could kill the whole crew." Optio Farnham shook his horned, triangular head, a gesture he had picked up from humans. "Just need some liquid courage. We're close to 20L units," John replied. As he spoke, the lights dimmed, and moments later the room was flooded by red lights, accompanied by the scream of wind from the opening hatch. "That's my cue." John smiled, slapped Farnham on the shoulder, and exhaled a cloud of steam. "Nippy," he said, closing his helmet completely. The hatch fully opened, a small green light lit up, and John ran, jumping with a 180-degree turn, flipping his middle fingers before being swept out of view. "Optio, Optio," one of the Munifexes shouted. "We lost the human. He just jumped out, on purpose. Calm yourself, Munifex Celeran. He's human and does human things. The Ranger will find a suitable landing zone since our sensors couldn't penetrate the stratosphere." "Esteemed Optio, what was that gesture?" "I didn't recognize it from the Star Alliance nonverbal communication protocol," another trooper asked. "That, Munifex crank, was a human gesture indicating the rest of us can copulate while he scouts for a landing zone." "Why would we do that, esteemed Optio? It's not mating season. I've been told for humans it's a leisure activity, not one of extreme psychological strain. That's why he suggested it, but he didn't mean it." Farnham stopped explaining and began rubbing his neural nodes. "Esteemed Optio, why did the human consume poison, in case he's captured? Where does he hide the antidote?" Farnham sighed, another human expression he'd adapted. Luckily, John's voice came through the comms just in time. "Beacon placed. Nice and flat. No immediate hostiles. Disembark and regroup with me 300 mem units at 246. The dropship touched down, and the Atraxian stormtroopers marched out in a column, all 20 of them. For most, it was their first time on a different planet. For all, except Farnham, their first time on a Deathworld. They gawked and cowered, half expecting some primordial beast to tear them apart, or a giant bird to swoop down from the sky. As they approached the tree line, a human figure emerged from the shadows. "It's the small ones you should be watching for," John said, waving an impaled crawler on his knife in front of a Munifex's face. "See the sharp mandibles? Made to deliver a toxic agent." He squeezed the creature's head, and a small droplet oozed from the tips. The Munifex's scales tightened in fear, and his eyes reflexively covered with protective eyelids. "How did you know?" asked another trooper. "Everything about it screams, 'Don't fucking touch me.'" "So the first thing you did was touch it," Farnham added, passing by. "I'm surprised you haven't eaten it yet." "Was waiting for you. Sharing is caring," John shot back, laughing. "Stop primating around and brief me." Their lengthy relationship allowed for such a jibe, and humans took especially well to jokes about their previous evolutionary steps. "Right. Sunrise in 4 hours. We've got a 40L units trek to the terrorist-held science base. We should cover at least 10K units by night, maybe faster during the day. Tell your boys to keep their spider sense peeled. We'll need it." Atraxians evolved with unparalleled sensitivity to pressure changes, allowing them to sense any movement nearby. Farnham had no idea what a spider was or why it should be peeled, assuming it was some hard-shelled Terran fruit, like the delicious chicken egg he'd once been gifted by John. Farnham had long since stopped caring. He understood what John meant. They had been together for cycles. Pickets, glabbers on full pressure at all times. Rotate each hour. John's nervous, which means business. I mean, danger. Farnham quickly corrected himself. And pants tight over shoes, John added, wiggling the crawler on his dagger, its hairy legs dangling, before shaking it off and stomping on it with a heel, muttering, "Double tap." Farnham hadn't seen John for hours at times, but he knew he was near. Farnham himself was a good tracker by his species' standards, but if John didn't leave marks, even he wouldn't have guessed his tracks. Where Atraxians walked through like battering rams without effort, the human danced through just as fast, if not faster. The mission was to rescue a xenobiologist held for ransom. Originally, the plan was to pay the ransom. But when the humans found out one of the biologists was human, it quickly became clear the terrorists would only be paid in tungsten. That's how humans dealt with threats. They paid it back double, if they were feeling merciful. Human rangers were often attached to contingents for their ability to instantly adapt to any environment that didn't kill them outright, and they easily navigated terrain from steep mountains to endless deserts. As an Atraxian, Farnham could feel the magnetic pulls of each planet, and he found it fascinating how humans didn't, yet used them with exact precision. Just like John right now with his needle in a clock, what he called a compass. "You could have asked me," said Farnham. "As much as I hope we grow old together, we're soldiers. I can't rely on you being around all the time." John smiled. It unnerved a lot of younger Munifex to see someone baring their teeth, but Farnham had gotten used to it. "I know. I just wanted you to know I'm here. Brother, you got this unit on this mission. You convinced Command to send us instead of paying the ransom. That means a lot to me." They knocked helmets together, a gesture they coincidentally shared. "Optio, what is brother?" asked a Munifex who had overheard the conversation. "A human honorific, hard to explain." Farnham didn't elaborate further, but he was proud of that one. Other humans completely changed their behavior once they heard John calling him brother. The next morning they approached the research station. While they had just arrived following John's marks, he already had a detailed map of the compound, buildings, terrain, elevation, guard posts, rotations, and the hostage's location. "Try to get as close as possible without being seen. Once a lookout spots you, I'll blow his head off." He tapped his rifle, now fitted with a scope. "That should create a gap in their defenses for you to start a full assault. Explain it to the Munifexes." The unit had a lot of greenhorns who had a tough time adjusting to John, and this tactic went against their straightforward nature. Why not just fire from the get-go? Why not display their strength? These were the usual questions, but Farnham knew that when it came to ambushes, humans were experts. He gathered his troops and explained the plan. "I've done this with him multiple times. If you need a name for it, he calls it guerrilla tactics, named after one of the strongest predators from Terra. They're cousins or something. So the most important thing is to walk on all fours through that grass. We'll try to get as close as possible. When they see us, start firing, but John will probably take them out before that. Yes, he will, before you ask. I saw him hunting flyers with that thing of his." "Did he eat them after?" joked one of the Munifex. It was good they were getting used to him, so Farnham played along this time. As a matter of fact, he did, along with some of the organs. He smiled. They knocked heads together with dim laughter and started sneaking. They didn't get far, but far enough to get within the compound without giving the enemy a chance to mobilize. While a human rifle could be heard miles away, the enemy didn't react, except for the soldier on patrol who dropped dead. Heads started popping from windows, and as they did, they literally popped, followed by the echo of John's rifle. Finally, the terrorists managed to organize, but it was too late. They were in close quarters combat with Atraxians, a situation not even humans liked, despite jumping out of spaceships at night and whatnot. Not that they wouldn't. They just didn't enjoy it. There was only one last pocket of resistance, naturally where the hostages were held. John knocked on the door. "Open the door, or I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in," John said. "A human," someone whispered from behind the doors. "I will execute each being here for every hour we are not off this planet," came a familiar voice. "A human," was now said from their side of the door. It was John. There was a moment of hesitation on John's face, then anger. He waved Farnham over. "You damn well bull-rush those doors right now." "John, what's the deal?" "There's a human inside aiming a gun at people. She'll start executing folk for every hour we don't do what she says. So, bull-rush those doors. Come on, boys. Should I kill one now so you know I mean business?" said a woman voice from the room. "Oh yeah, it's a human for sure. What do you think? A 10 unit run should get me through. No?" said Farnham, but it was just a rhetorical question. He removed his helmet and polished his reinforced bony forehead, right between his horns. John started knocking on the walls, testing the thickness for Farnham, until he got a nod from him. The other human misinterpreted it as an attempt at communication. "Now that I have your atten—" She was interrupted by a loud crash, and the sudden appearance of a giant Atraxian in their midst, with a rotoxan impaled on his horns, screaming and thrashing. A human followed through the breach, and the rotoxan next to her fell, a hole in his forehead. "Please don't. We can tall—" she began, before her brain exploded. "You're human. You should have known we don't negotiate with terrorists," John said, smoke still rising from his weapon. Farnham shook the now-dead rotoxan from his horns. "You know what, John? It never ceases to surprise me how easily you pull the trigger on one of your own. It still terrifies me." John looked at him, then at the speechless Atraxians and the hostages. "Not really. She gave up her humanity the moment she chose the easy path. I killed a parasite, not a human."